Hello, and thank you for joining us on another episode of the Uncharted podcast, your home for nonprofit data talk, donor management tools and updates, and financial integrations. I'm your co-host, Jeremy, and I'm joined as always by my partner, Summer. Summer, how are you doing?
Doing great today. How are you, Jeremy?
I am stressed. I'm not going to lie. Yeah. I like to be very honest, right? Like, it's just stressful. Like, first of all, we had 27 inches of snow over the weekend. So we are both right in Wisconsin. If you heard national headlines, which we do not get headlines, like if the Northeast gets slammed with something, it's like it's Armageddon. The world's going to end. When California is having mudslides, press is there, all that stuff. Now it's like, oh, Wisconsin got a bunch of snow. Who cares?
Right. Yeah.
So, a little bitter about that, but stressed with that, and then just have some like fun payroll things coming up at work and all that. So the show must go on, though. So here we are.
Must. Did you have to dig yourself out of anything?
So I have a good snowblower, and so that did most of it. But yeah, there were enough of it that I had to shovel. I had to go help my in-laws and a neighbor too. So a fun-filled couple days of snow. So
Yes.
we did not have a green St. Patrick's Day here. We're actually recording on the 18th, and we're a little ahead of the game. Hope to stay ahead of that. So we release these every 2 weeks. We try to give our producer enough time to produce them. Yeah, or we sound like trash. But yeah, we definitely had a white St. Patrick's Day, not a green one around here.
Yes.
Yeah.
My husband was out there shoveling for a very, very long time until our neighbor with a snowplow came by and helped him out with the last little bit.
Yeah, please let me help you.
Yes.
Yeah. Brings out the best in us, though.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So one thing I forgot to do last time that I want to continue to do is we dropped 2 episodes ago that Donor Perfect has this calendar, and I believe we have that in our show notes on episode 3 there. And we'll try to keep it in all of them, but it's great, just little tips. And I was one of them to jump on early, so I have the calendar here. And I like today's tip, fits in very well with us, is use your CRM's custom reporting features to paint a fuller picture of the human behind the data. So I think that's spot on with Uncharted messaging. And it also has got a scan to how you use your data to manage your nonprofit. So it's got a little webinar that you can watch on there. So I encourage everybody to check that out. I might have to do that myself. All right. So last time we dug into Givebutter and really went through how to kind of set up your account there, bring in your contacts, some of the important things to think about with the fields and that. And then you had the great idea is like, hey, let's not rush through this, right? We're going to kind of have to 3-piece this. We kind of thought it would be a 2-piece and then bring an expert in. If you're a Givebutter expert, reach out. Now we're going to recruit some people. So today I think we want to focus more on the fundraising functions itself, right? And the workflows and the CRM specific features. And this really is the meat of the tool, right? Is like, how do we use this to manage our donors and start campaigns and all of that, right?
Yes, I'm excited for this one. I have lots more to dive into. So,
all right. So I don't know if you want to start here, and if not, let me know. But I think the first part was kind of bringing in some transactional data. So if you remember in the last one, we brought in the donor data, but just as important that you retain the history of your donors and when, like what they've given and when, so you can segment them and you can leverage that. Do you want to start there?
Yes, let's do that.
Okay, so Summer's going to bring this up. So hope you're watching on YouTube. You can see this too. If not, we'll talk through all the pertinent details as well. Okay, so just got logged in here under Givebutter. And then, see, not fully set up to do a campaign on my side yet, but I think we want to get then to transactions, right?
Yes, so go ahead, go to transactions. And then there's the import button up at the top.
Okay, much like the other one, they do have a template, right? So definitely can use that.
And then I don't know if you have that template accessible. However, just some things to note on there. It's a very extensive template, which is great, but it goes through and it tells you what you have to have set up in Givebutter before you can import, kind of minimal fields that you have to have. If you have this field, then you have to have that field. So lots of great information. I thought it was a very well laid out template.
Okay. Do you think there was anything on there that you're surprised was not a required field or missing of their fields?
Well, I was a little caught off guard at first because I was looking for the soft credits. So here's a little
Oh,
tidbit. You have to do transactions, soft credits, and recurring gifts all separately. So you can't do it all in once. So if you have um, multiple gifts who are soft credited, you'll have to do the original transaction and then the soft credit transaction.
and for us not smart people, remind us what soft credits are.
Yes. So typically you would see a soft credit with like a donor advised fund, right? So
Mm,
let's say you have the John Doe donor advised fund who had given a gift, and then you also have your John Doe household. So the original hard credit is going to be under the donor advised fund,
yeah.
and then your soft credit is going to go to the household. That way, that when you're talking to your donor or researching your donor, you can see that they didn't physically give it, it came from the DAF, but it's still kind of a part of their household. That
Would
makes sense.
would like matching, like, so employers have ones where if they give like $500, the employer will match it. Would you consider that employer match also a soft credit?
I typically would, just because I like to see that the donor went through and did the work to get us a
Yeah.
matching gift. But that's going to be an organizational policy that you have to talk through.
Okay. Ooh, all sorts of fun. Okay, so got the import transactions up here. You can see whole list of fields, and again on the left shows the template and the columns that are in there, and then the destination field, so you can easily map, and it'll give a preview of like, hey, here are some of the data that you have, and what is going to get mapped over into each of the fields by names and amounts and campaign titles and all of that stuff.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to continue here. So the next one is payment methods. So it looks like we have like good call outs that if you have, so much like Excel, if they're not exactly the same, they're not going to equal each other in your formulas. So one has cash that's not capitalized. We're going to map that to the capitalized cash. The rest of them have like check to check, credit card goes to card. Pretty self explanatory. Okay. Continue one more time. So now it's going to think. And I think our sheet had um, like about 100 entries. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
500.
Oh, 506 records. Yep. Okay. Cool. So looking at this now, if you look, everything comes in and field, then scrolling all the way over to the right, you can see there are some invalid fields. It'll call that out again. So let's talk through those. The first one is appeal status, right? So our data set didn't fill that in.
Yes. So they want to know, is this appeal active or
Okay.
inactive? So, especially if you're importing historical data and you have a bunch of appeals from years ago, obviously those aren't active appeals.
Right.
So they'll still import, but they'll be set to an inactive status.
Got it. But the good point out here is you do not need to wait between campaigns to do this, right? If you have active ones, you can pull this data in, mark it as active, and then that campaign will be continually going. So I
Yes.
think I'm going to mark these all as inactive, or which one do you like?
Just do active.
Okay. And then I already forgot how to copy that down.
There should be three dots next to appeal
Oh,
status.
yeah. So went in, just hit replace empty cells with active, and it's going to go ahead and do that for us. Cool. Okay. Next one's time zone.
So actually, it's very slick and tricky how quick it does this, but all of your records have now been moved from invalid to valid. So you only have one invalid
Oh,
record, and the rest are now
got it.
valid.
Got it. And that field that is invalid is, so this one has a dedication type. So this is like in memorandum of, in honor of, and it's
Mm-hmm.
missing who we are in honor of here. So I'm gonna put Jane Doe there, and then I think we're good, and we can submit it. All right, come back live. So it took about maybe a minute to get these 500 records in, and then Summer had given me instructions like, "Hey, you need to actually put contact IDs in this file for it to work." And as I quipped, much like my wife, I didn't read all the words, so I did not do that. So we got some errors in this, but I think we have enough to keep going, right?
Uh,
Um,
well, you didn't import any transactions, so you either need a name or the contact ID, and the template will tell you that. Um,
got it.
So what you need to do is you actually have to go to your contacts, export, and this is actually really good for the users to know as well.
Oh,
So
okay.
when I had to do the imports, what I did first is I did the contact import so that it would create a Givebutter contact ID. Once I had all my contacts in there, I exported from contacts, just as you're doing, and then grabbed my contact ID from there. So if you are planning on doing a conversion or even coming from a spreadsheet, you'll need to do the contacts first to create the contact ID. Again, you can use first name and last name and it will try to match it, but as a data person, I always recommend doing the contact ID or whatever field you're using, the actual ID for it, because that will decrease the chance of duplicates, mismatching,
Yeah.
putting it under someone else. So,
Yeah, and it's a unique field, right? Like there's no room for excuse me, error. Okay,
unless you don't put it
unless you don't put it in right.
in.
Okay, so again, just for time on this one, so you would have these contact IDs. Now, would you need to assign an ID to every one of the lines that you're going to put in the uploaded data? Which makes
Yes.
sense. Okay.
So, what I would recommend doing is if you have your original export, and actually, Jeremy, can you tell me, because you just exported, does it have the external ID as one of the fields?
Oh,
Because then you wouldn't have to mismatch or mix up your Excels. You could just do the one export, make sure you have your Givebutter ID, make sure you have your external ID, and then based on that data, find your historical transactions. But yes, so if Morgan Martinez right there
yeah,
has 5 transactions, right, you will need to find them within your old system and then use your Givebutter ID, 5 separate lines for each transaction. Does that
got
make
it.
sense?
Yeah, so this is where someone like Summer comes in handy, right? Is that you're going to know this process, assign, make sure that you're assigning it to the right contact ID when you're uploading the transactions in there. Um,
Yes.
yeah, totally makes sense.
Yep, this is going to be a huge one to really pay attention to your details, verify your information, do quality checks. So do like a test batch first, maybe a group of 5 to 10 donors. Make sure all of their information is imported correctly before you do any big batches. And depending on how much data you're bringing over, maybe even do it in smaller batches. So that way, if something weird were to happen or something were to come over kind of wonky, you then only have to fix a batch of it instead of the entire thing.
Yep. No, totally agree. Again, just reiterating, obviously you need to have these all tied to the right records. And again, we don't changing systems is never easy, right? And new systems cannot know how to tie the data together. So that is an internal process that the development leadership or somebody on the team needs to take to make sure that each transactional record is getting tied to the right person, and uber important that you have the history to make these decisions on. So got it. Okay, so we have some transactions in here. Where do we want to go next?
Let's go to settings. So one thing I want to point out as well, you have to pre-build your funds before you can do an import. That's one of the fields that you have to have built out. You do not have to pre-build your campaigns and your appeals though. So again, checking and verifying your data, right? Um, if you have appeals that are inactive that you want for historical data, it'll create it in Givebutter for you instead of you having to go in and rebuild everything from your old system. And you can do all that through settings. So that's why I was going to have you go there.
Okay.
Perfect. So, yep, perfect. Here's funds. You can just add new. Um, you can do the name and the code. So, what I've liked to do in the past
Yeah.
is put the name like in general operating, and then the code I like to do as like the GL code or whatever matches your
Yeah.
finance department.
Got it.
I will say though, for importing, it was frustrating trying to map all of my data in my Excel sheet because when I had the code in there, it kept wanting to like put different numbers, and I'm like, I couldn't get the formula to work. So for that, I just put general operating in the code just for the import as well, because then I could just click down and it would just fill it all in for me.
Oh yeah, yeah, right. So yeah,
uh,
another thing that we just need to be careful putting it correctly. Yeah. Okay.
yes, it's super easy to make mistakes when you're working with such
Right.
large data sets in a spreadsheet. So just we're gonna keep hitting on this because
Right.
it's so important.
Right.
So yeah, depending on how many funds you have, you'd put them all in here first, and then appeals is the other one.
Okay.
You can add them as new, but you're going to need to make sure that if you're adding them before your import, that you're putting the appeal code
Got
in
it.
the import, because I just put the name and it didn't recognize it when I did the import. It made all new ones with the same names. And I'm like, interesting. Okay.
Okay.
So make sure you have your codes. Oh, one thing I wanted to show you with the appeals, if you click add new,
Yep.
so you can really only do the appeal name and the code, and then whether it's active or not. So this is kind of more going to be on the fundraising development side, probably doesn't really affect the bookkeeping side. But I found this to be a little frustrating because you can't segment. So in other systems I've used, you can segment it within the appeal, such as like your donor life cycle. So you could have like active, at risk, lapsing, and
Yeah.
then break out your messages based on that. But Givebutter is kind of like a really simple, just really out of the box, right?
Yeah.
So segmenting is all done either within your Engage module with your email, text, mailing, um, or done in like the reports. You can segment in the reports, but
Okay. So
not.
for appeal code, what would you usually use for that? Would you use like a alphanumeric?
Yeah, something that's easy is probably something for your like data admin to put in. So
Yeah.
like AD,
Yeah.
annual dinner, or ANDIN, or something kind of small,
Got
easy
it.
to pull reports on. Um, this was actually a sticking point for one of my clients because in other CRMs you can't change the codes, and so it was
Mm,
either all or nothing, like the whole words or nothing, and so that was kind of frustrating for them.
yeah. Yeah. And the thing that I would add here is make sure you're aligned on how you're setting the codes up. Is it 4 digits? Is it 5? Is it 2? Whatever it is, right? And give yourself a runway so you can use a lot of them, right? If you're going to use this new tool going
Yes,
forward.
I would
Got
absolutely write a policy around naming conventions.
it. Yep.
So even if you're not the one entering the data, if somebody else is, then they still know how to do it and like
Right.
what convention to follow. And you can use numbers, you can put anything you want in there. So if you're a numbers person, that's easier to remember, go for it.
Right. But
Just
just
make
make
sure, again, it's
yeah,
consistent.
yeah, and make sure they're different when you're using a fund code versus an appeal code or whatever. Is it? Yeah, start with a certain digit, certain amount of characters, etc. Yeah,
Absolutely.
got it. Okay, so we have our appeal in here.
Yes. And then have you done a campaign yet?
I think I had a test campaign added. Yep.
Perfect. So you can go ahead and just click edit if you want to.
Okay.
And so here, I believe it is settings.
Okay.
And scroll down. I think it's towards the bottom. There you go. You can add your appeal here. So if you were creating annual dinner form and you wanted your annual dinner appeal, you can put that
Mm,
there. So this again was a little limiting for me. Um, in a traditional structure, or at least what I've seen in the past, is kind of like we talked about on previous episodes. You'd have your campaign, then your appeal, then your fund. So the campaign was kind of this overarching goal. Um, in Givebutter, it's more so a form. You can't just build a campaign. It's either a donation form, a fundraising form, or an event form. So if you have more than one annual dinner, right? So if you have it every year, you're either going to have to create a new campaign, a new appeal to go together every single year, or something of that nature. You can't have the events campaign and then appeal, 2026, 2025, 2024, so on and so forth. Because it's one campaign, one appeal.
Got it. Okay.
And then I think you can add a default fund as well, but that's not a big deal. I think that's under tools or details or something. But
there it is. Fund. General operating. Okay.
so, and here you can either display your funds, so let your donors choose, or turn off the display, which depending on, again, what your campaign is, what you're doing with it, like an annual dinner, obviously you probably don't want to have them picking and choosing funds, so you could just turn that off, and then it will go to your default fund.
Right. And very much do not paint yourself into a corner that you have to have restricted funding. So, especially for those dinners and general events, don't force yourself to have restricted funds unless it's for a specific purpose, like be able to use it for operating or whatever you need to do.
Right, exactly. Because you can always disperse, but you can't really get it back.
Okay, so I think we got the bones in place now.
So yeah, that's kind of the basics of importing your transactions, where the fund appeal and campaigns are, if you want to either pre-build or just kind of get a sense of what information Givebutter's looking for those. Again, another thing to keep in mind is if you are coming from another database, you're going to have to think about, what did your campaigns and appeals look like in that former database? Were they kind of more that traditional where it's that overarching events and then annual dinner and cascading down? Or can you kind of make it work in this? So it's really going to take a lot more than just, oh, let's switch to Givebutter. It's going to be a lot of conversations of, okay, what do our campaigns look like? What's that structure look like? How does it work in Givebutter? And how can we restructure that? Because I would definitely care to wager that there are people who would consider going to Givebutter who would need to restructure how they think about that kind of stuff. So it's really good for like out of the box forms, and it's really simple, really slick to use. But I would say either a new nonprofit or somebody who's coming from spreadsheets, or maybe another really kind of simple out of the box to come over to Givebutter. Otherwise, it's going to be pretty complex if you're coming from a more robust system to kind of simplify down those fields.
Yeah. Okay. All right, cool. So have our campaign set up, and then we want to get to some transactional stuff, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So we can show them kind of how to enter a one-time transaction.
Okay.
So you can either go to transactions or I believe go to a contact. Let's go to transactions.
Okay, so here in transactions, so we're going to put a new transaction in then to pick our test campaign. I'm going to make me the donor so I can feel good about myself. Okay, and then can put an address, and then obviously amount is important. Say I did $100 in cash. No, cash. Cash
Yeah.
checks, please no. Make an electronic transaction, please, for the love of God.
I'd love to hear more about your feelings on cash sometime.
Yeah, I mean, it just increased, first of all, risk, right? Like, if you people have people handing cash around, and like also with checks, and you have to physically then have somebody take these to the bank, and they're from an accounting or governance standpoint or compliance, you need to separate these duties, right? That you're not having the person who's getting the cash, logging it in the system, and putting it in the bank, and in your books half the time doing the reconciliation. So, not my favorite way to collect funds, but I realize sometimes in nonprofits, I'm just going to give you money, you take the money. But like something you definitely need to think about and have in place.
Yes, cash has historically been a sticking point
Yeah.
for a lot of people I've worked with.
Yeah,
so that's why I was like, how does Jeremy feel about this?
Yeah, I get it. So then it looks like there's like a generic message field,
Yes.
where you can just type in any kind of message here, right?
Yep, and then it pops up in the supporter feed in the campaign if it is active. So, like, let's say you sent a donation and you said, "Way to go, nonprofit! good for you. It would pop up in that feed there.
And is this something? But this still would be like it's not going to show up on the acknowledgement for the client or any of that. It's still kind of internal, but more broad organization internal, right? So if somebody's running a report, they could see this information, things like that.
Right.
Okay.
From my
And,
understanding.
yeah. Yep. And then another one, an internal note. This would be more for like the actual people running the campaigns and setting this up.
Right. So this is going to be like your fundraisers, your data admin, whoever. So if it was restricted, right, or
Yeah.
a grant or something, you could put in here grant for restricted grant for XYZ use.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I like your note better.
Jeremy's very handsome. And that's like, but get back to your point, like as a finance person, that's important. And if we're using internal messaging or note fields to drive that, that to me is somewhat problematic, right? That I can't put like, hey, we have a grant and it's restricted and have that as a field. Because I don't think I saw that as a field anywhere here, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I feel like that's a little bit of an opportunity for them.
Yeah, there's remember those custom fields. So if you wanted to create a custom field for grants, restricted, XYZ finance purpose, you still could do that.
Yeah, please do that for your accounting staff. That they have restrictions. Okay, then soft credit. We kind of talked about that as well. This could be a match that's going out there or some related funds, not directly from the donor, but from a related field. Yep.
Right. Another example of that I've seen is like if you're doing a big group donation. I can't think of what the event is called, but there's an event in Wisconsin that we do where a lot of people donate to this, like they donate to this organization and then the organization cuts the nonprofit a check. So then you have to go through and you soft credit all the donors who donated.
Yeah. Give Big Green Bay.
Yes.
Yeah. Just wrapped up last month. So cool. Okay. So I'm tying it to an appeal, and then other options, you can add a dedication. You can send a receipt, which again, send receipts for the love of God, right? Like make sure your donor feels loved. Then also you can shroud the name or the amount, so it's not displayed publicly. And I know there's a lot of donors that appreciate that as well. And then the last option here, send an admin notification. So when it's enabled, admin receives a notification for this transaction. So if you're really trying to keep track of something and have that communication option, that's nice as well. Okay, so save this one. We have our first donation in the system. Oh, there it is. Oh, beautiful.
So a couple things to point out here on this screen. That little heart all the way to the right, that is your acknowledgement. So if you were to click the receipt, it would mark it as acknowledged for you. I haven't tested that yet.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that. But anyways, if you were just to click the button, it would say acknowledged. And then if you were to click it again, it would say unacknowledged. So that is their whole acknowledgement thing. That's it. Which is can be concerning, because if you want to see when a donor was acknowledged, what they were acknowledged with, how they were acknowledged, things like that. So if you have a specific acknowledgement for your annual dinner, for example, if you wanted to send an annual dinner thank you, you can't really track that in here. It's either acknowledged or not acknowledged. And when you export as well, it either says true or false.
Okay.
So there's just not a lot of data there, which is, as a gift entry person, that's frustrating for me. So I would just say, depending on, again, your policies, how you're taking transactions in, and acknowledging your donors, if you're still mailing receipts or mailing thank yous, that's going to be something you're going to want to pay a little closer attention to make sure.
And I jumped into the settings because, like, you want ideally be able to customize these to the event, to the donor, write things in here. Mm-hmm. And they do have like a thank you message, right? That people get an email on that, and then a year-end summary. But I'm not seeing a lot of options here. So either like you would need to update this every time when you're doing a certain campaign, you want it to be specific, or you got to write a real generic one. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Yeah, I would say you'd probably want to do a generic one, but then also follow up with a personalized one, just to make sure that they're getting thanked, because you can never thank your donors enough. But also, again, making sure that if you're mailing them an acknowledgement, tracking that somehow, because donors will call, say, hey, I didn't get my receipt. Where is it? And it's nice to have that information, like, oh, I see here it was mailed on XYZ date. But so that's something that's pretty limiting that I didn't love, was the acknowledgement piece. But if you're, mostly digital and you're not really mailing them, then yeah, go for it.
And I think too, like if you got a lot of these digital ones, maybe you get the generic ones out there, but like people appreciate snail mail now, right? It's funny how we've come full circle, where it's like emails used to be cool before, now it's like, oh, I got a piece of mail, right? And if you have that handwritten note, or whatever that is, that can be really impactful.
Yes, absolutely. Donors like to have something they can read and kind of touch. They like the physicalness of it for sure. And again, the personalized. So thank you so much for your $20,000 annual dinner gift. This helped us do XYZ, that kind of stuff. So,
Yep. Okay. Okay. So then let's jump. So we have one transaction out here. Let's see if we want to import a whole bunch of them. Right.
yes.
Okay.
So importing, and then if you also go into import, which we didn't note the first time, so transactions import,
Yep.
you can manually enter them. So you don't have to only upload.
Oh yeah.
So this is what I gathered would be kind of like their batch entry. So if you're an organization who's still getting checks, which I believe most are, and you don't want to enter things one at a time through that other screen that we were just in, you can do it here. But one thing that I noticed is it doesn't prompt you with information, right? So you'll have to type in either the appropriate first name and last name and make sure that it matches, or have your constituent ID on like your reply devices somewhere so that you can put that in.
Got it.
But these fields are identical to the import fields.
Yeah.
So anything that's here, that's just kind of what there is available. If you need to do a soft credit or something additional, you'll have to do that after you import. So you have to go back into the transaction to do it.
Yeah, and I feel like it's not validating the entries either. So if you would misspell something, I guess if you tried to import it and did match one of your donors, or when you try to hit submit, it would probably call that out as a error code or invalid.
Yeah, it should kick it back.
Okay, that makes sense.
Or it might create them as new. I haven't tested that yet.
Yeah. But again, why you'd want to use that transaction or the donor code,
Yes.
right? So that you make sure it's getting tied to it, because then it'll fill in the rest of the information. So
Right.
really use codes where you can.
Right.
Got it.
Absolutely. So yeah, you can enter however many checks you want. Typically for batch entry, you're going to want a few checks or a few transactions, so you're not wasting your time doing an entire batch. Again, another policy that your data admin or your gift entry person needs to come up with is like, okay, at what point do we switch from individual entry to batch entry? So it is possible in Givebutter. It's just there's not a lot of additional options, and you'll still have to do some manual work with your transactions once they're actually in.
Got it. Cool. Okay.
So yeah, the only other thing I was going to mention is, yeah, I think my last comment is just how you could make this work for campaign appeal and fund, but I can wait to say that. So if you have any comments.
So how you could make this work to have better insight to the dollars and where they're all posting, or what does that look like?
Oh yeah, we could go. Sorry, reporting.
I
Yeah.
think we're doing reporting next time. Like, what are you thinking with that comment you just said?
Oh, just like because you want it to make sense for your development staff and your finance, right? So, and also how it works within Givebutter. So because it is a form, you're going to want to, for example, if we did like the 2026 March appeal as a campaign, then we could do the appeals. Maybe we don't want to call it that. We'll do the 2026 annual dinner as the campaign, and then your appeals could be like your segment groups. So your active, at-risk, lapsing. But it also really depends on what information is needed. Do you need to know your ROI on each segment? Does your board want to know that? Things like
Yeah.
that. So there's a lot of additional details where you really have to talk through with all the people in your organization, all the departments, what information they need to figure out how to structure things and what fields to even put in.
Yeah. So let's do a couple minutes on that anyway,
Okay.
because I think that's important too from a finance point. So, okay, so let's do that. So, okay, so we have some test data in here. And now I think one thing that we didn't really talk about is, so we have, I think, three main functions or like attributes for, because we're running out of descriptive words, attributes to these dollars is one is the campaign and then the fund and then the appeal. So let's talk about how we can best use that for internal management and for financial management. So let's start with the campaign. So to me, that should describe like what is happening, right? Is it your dinner? Is it your annual appeal? And I know we got appeals separate, but like what is the actual event that is happening, and using event very generally there, that the dollars are coming in and getting received, right?
Right.
Okay. Okay. Then if you go appeal, where would you think that is best used?
So appeal, I would say you could use them as kind of your segmenting. Like I was talking about earlier, there's not really a segmenting option in your campaign appeals. So if you did your annual dinner campaign and you did like the form or the fundraising form on there, then you could do the appeal as maybe your tables or your sponsors or your individual tickets or active or lapsed or at risk, depending on again what information you're trying to capture. So typically you're going to see this cascading effect where you have the campaign, the appeal, and then the fund based on the information you're trying to achieve with recording. So this is where we were talking about you're really going to need to think about how you want it structured and possibly how to restructure it if you're used to doing it one way in one system. Because what might be important to your finance people might not be as important to your board or as important to your fundraisers. So really leveraging how Givebutter is set up to relay that information in a way that makes sense for your organization. Lots of conversations are going to need to be had anytime you go into a new CRM or into any CRM for the first time, again, around data governance and what fields are important and what you're going to need for reporting.
Yeah. I like this. And then I think fund really is like we talked about how like general operating funds, or it could be for a specific program, like it's funding the shelter for an organization like that. And I think we need to pick this one back up because like number 3 is going to be like, what is the reporting that's available? So our next episode on this one. And then how does that integrate with your finances? And I think that could really determine that, because as a financial person, I not only need to know like what is the function, like your campaign, but also what is that supporting and how am I tracking that and how can I pull that systematically and get it to import into the finance system. And then the fund usually is like what program in the business, what effort in the organization is getting supported by these funds. So I have thoughts on that too. So I think we'll go full circle on this when we get back next time and look at like, okay, now what does this look like in a report? How do we pull it into finances? What kind of insight can we draw from there? Okay.
Awesome.
Couple other quick questions on this. So what are your thoughts on like you don't want to send out these blank appeals without testing them? Do you set up like personal emails for people in the organization so you can see it and test it and make sure it's working and what the messaging is out there and all that? Because the last people want to see is like, dear first name, we're starting an appeal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you're new on something like this. Maybe after you run a couple of them, you'll feel good about it. But yeah, what are your thoughts? Like, I would do that just about always. Is like, how do you set up some test people to figure out, hey, this is working, and from point A to point Z, we're really comfortable with the whole process?
Yes, absolutely. I always have test people. I always need people to kind of like play around with different things in a system. And so I would say create 3 to 5 test records, right? Probably like a household, so John and Jane Doe, maybe a donor advised fund, because those are pretty common, and then maybe a business and maybe an extra. But at least those four. So a household, an organization, and a donor advised fund, just so you can understand how things are going to flow between the records and the appeals and all of the items. Um, I think also there are settings within Givebutter where you can send test emails and initiatives to yourself. But I do like the idea of testing it to a group of people, especially people who are in the CRM. Because then you can kind of create fake data. Usually with my test people, I do anything under $1. So my finance people know that anything under $1, that's test data, or I omit it from the reports as well. So it's usually greater than or equal to $1 for any reports that I'm sending out to anyone. But that's kind of what I like to do. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would agree. Like I've seen bad ones go out without that, and I also think, again, once after you run a couple of these, could be different. But like, what is the user experience like? Right. So like, is it easy for the person to be like, yes, I would like to give to this, and here's how I do that. Givebutter. We talked about if you use their, I don't call it tipping, but whatever, like asking the donor to cover or donate some to Givebutter to cover the fees. What does that look like? How painful is it? Right? And just generally, like, does it work on a phone? Does it work on an email? Things like that. Is the user experience pretty fluid? Because nobody wants to click 30 times or fill out 30 things, and we'll get bored in the process and be like, nope, I'm not giving the money this time. So, yeah, I think that's uber important too.
Absolutely. And also testing any links, right? So
Yeah.
links to an online donation form or donor portal. I like to put access to people's donor portal and like the receipts that I
Yeah.
send out. So if they do want to change anything, they can go there. But you need to make sure it works, right?
Right. Every additional click by a potential donor makes them rethink their life choices.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Cool. Okay. Cool. Well, I think this was good. It's a lot. Again, number 2 of 3. We're going to bring this full circle with the next one and talk through how the reports come out, how we get this to be financially usable information, and what that all looks like. And then we'll kind of try to wrap it up in a tiny bow with final thoughts next time.
That sounds great.
Great. All right. I think that's all we got for today. Thanks, Summer, and we'll see you all in the next one.
See you next time.